Joining me now for another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. I'm going to start with the title first because he's from the Pickaxe Roll podcast, which is part of the Mile High Sports Network. And he covers the defending champion Denver Nuggets. It's the first time I get to have a defending champion on the show. He is Ryan Blackburn. Ryan, welcome back to the show. And it's the first time I've had you on since the Nuggets won. So I'll start by saying congratulations. Thank you, Andrew. It's always great to be known by my title, defending champion. That's the most important thing I can bring to any show is my championship expertise. So I really appreciate it. That's the most elitist thing you'll hear from me say today. I'm sure, but I also completely empathize and relate that if the Knicks ever win a title, it will be like in my signature, in my email. It'll be like my, you know how like text signatures used to exist? It was just every text, and it's like, you on your way home? Yup, the Knicks won the title. Like that would just be the thing I say in any conversation. You know, like if I went to the bank, what would you like to deposit? Oh, just $100. The Knicks won the title. Like it would be part of my everyday vocabulary. If we want to just spend some time on this, like what has this season been like with the fact that like your team won the last game of the season last year? The ultimate goal was reached. What's the follow-up year, the afterglow of a title? How has that felt like?
It's been really interesting. It's not really what I expected. I remember when they won it, there was this so Nikola Jokic had this quote at the end of the run. The job is done. We can go home now. Mm-hmm. And that made the rounds, and everybody was making fun of him for that. And I honestly felt the same way in a lot of ways because there was so much pressure for the Nuggets. There was so much pressure just with everybody involved that you finally get back Jamal Murray, you finally get back Michael Porter, and there was a ton put on last season for Denver. And now it kind of feels kind of the same way. A little bit less pressure, obviously, because you get it done the first time. And even if you never win another championship in your entire franchise, like you still got the one and you still got that's the most important one for Denver. But I think everybody involved knows how important this moment is for the Nuggets, where you've got Nikola Jokic, who's the best player in the world and one of the most dominant players that we've ever seen play. And you've got him in his prime. And how long can you say that for is a very real question. And so you want to take advantage of it. You want to take advantage of the moment. And I think everybody understands how important these moments are, even if they're still kind of waiting for the playoffs, even if the regular season isn't as important. Like Denver's still trying to compete for a 1 seed. They're still trying to get as many wins as they possibly can. And they continue to approach games in much the same way, although they may approach the Boston Celtics game a little bit different than the Washington Wizards game. So it's understandable. That's human nature, but it has been really interesting to monitor and track. And I think they're still on track, well and good.
Yeah, it's been interesting to hear the conversation, even have some of the conversations about like who scares you in each conference. And like obviously in the East, you've got this juggernaut at the top with the Celtics. And then like with what's going on in Milwaukee and like firing your coach after 43 games. And then like Doc Rivers' old team in Philly just kind of flat out needing to prove it in the playoffs at some point. Then you have this glut of teams with the Cavs and obviously the Knicks and the Pacers and the Heat, and like they're making moves to get better, and you know there's competition in the East. And in the West, like there's this Clipper team on the rise. There's these two new teams in the Thunder and the Timberwolves that you don't know what to expect come playoff time because the experience just isn't there. And at the end of the day, it's like the safest bet is the defending champ who didn't get worse last year. And I mean, that's where I kind of go to my question to you, like between the teams at the top of the East and then the teams that have joined the top of the West, who scares you in the potential repeat season that the Nuggets are chasing?
It's a good question because I think if you're the Nuggets, everything is still focused on Denver, and Denver will continue to focus on themselves individually until proven otherwise. And then like getting to the best place that you can be as an individual team is the most important thing in this. And I think Denver learned that last year, that they can't worry about anybody else. They just have to worry about themselves. And then they went 16-4. I think that if I were to put a button on it, I'd say that the T-Wolves are still the team that they fear the most in the West because they have the defensive personnel that actually matches up with Denver. If you listen to Denver last year, if you listen to the way that they talked about the run, they say that the first round series was the one that challenged them the most. And maybe it's because it was going from regular season intensity to playoff intensity, and they still weren't quite in their full on groove. But like that team last year, the T-Wolves did not have Jaden McDaniels. It did not have Naz Reid, two very, very impressive players that can help bolster what was a very solid team. And they've clearly bolstered them this year. And that's a dangerous looking group that can throw size and athleticism at Jamal Murray, that can throw bodies at Nikola Jokic, including a defensive player of the year caliber player in Rudy Gobert. And there's just a lot to like about their group that has both talent and depth. That's in the West. And I think you could throw the Clippers in there as a team that has just three elite scorers and playmakers that I think you have to account for sure. I still fear them less than I do the T-Wolves, because I think if you're a team that's trying to face the Nuggets, you have to take them out of their element offensively. I think the T-Wolves have the best chance to do that. In the East, it's probably the Sixers. They have the individual matchups that I think scare Denver the most in Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, a quick guard and a physical big that can space the floor out to three into the mid-range and just hit a bunch of open jumpers. Outside of them, like, does Denver fear the Boston Celtics? No. Do they fear the Miami Heat? No. Do they fear the Milwaukee Bucks? No. Like, I know that the Celtics are really, really good, but Denver just knows that they're more mentally tough than that team. They know that they will get into, like, if they get into a dogfight with that team, they will win. They just will.
You almost made me do a spit take. I was taking a sip of water, and you were like, "Nah, I'm not afraid of the Celtics." That's a bit of a take, sir, because the most unstoppable thing I've seen this year is that Celtics starting five when healthy. Now, I also recognize who gave the Celtics their first home loss last week, and I think I would pick Denver in a 7-game series against the Celtics. It's just, honestly, this all just goes back to Jokic and how dominant he was during the playoffs last year, and just how easy he makes it look sometimes. Like last night against the Pacers, we're recording this on Wednesday, and he has the three that clinched it at the end. And it's almost like as the play evolved, they're running their actions around him, and like this is either gonna be a dribble handoff or he's gonna hit someone. And Turner goes with the roll man, and Jokic just walks into a three, and it's like, oh, he's got that in his bag too if he wants to. He could like just nothing but net from straight on. Man, I don't even know what the question I have here is. It's just like, what the hell? Like, Jokic is awesome, huh?
He is an impossible player to game plan for, because you have to have so many things at your disposal in order to actually make his life difficult. The first thing that you have to have is size and strength. And it's more important than like athleticism or anything like that, because he'll cook guys that are athletic. It's more about guys that are strong, that he can't move off of their spots. And that's one thing that about Kristaps Porzingis, for example, like he folded over Kristaps Porzingis like a paperclip. Like it was wild to watch him work in the post, and he knows that he can go to that every single time. And then Al Horford's probably a better defensive matchup for him in a matchup like against the Celtics. But I thought a guy like Miles Turner did a really nice job against him in this Indiana game. And he went 13 of 19 and 3 of 4 from 3. Like, what is good for other people is not good enough for Jokic, because he is one step ahead of you every single time. And he has so many different things in his metaphorical bag that he can go to the playmaking, he can go to the scoring, he can shoot from distance, he can shoot from the mid-range, and he'll take these shots that defenses are more than happy to live with, that he's more than happy to take, and makes them at a higher rate than anybody in the league.
Which is why I think you were alluding to that, as far as like guarding Jokic, like that's at the end of the day what you're going to have to do in a 7-game series. It's like, do you have something that can not even neutralize him? Because there's no neutralizing Nikola Jokic, but that's why, I mean, it makes sense that your answer was in the Sixers, because there is the Embiid factor, which, look, I'm not getting into an Embiid Jokic thing. I asked you about it last year. He's great. And it became like a conversation that I'm not interested. They're both great. We don't have to talk about what's wrong with either of them. I will say that, so this is where I want to ask a Knicks related question in reference to this matchup. And the Knicks are on their 3rd and 4th string center, most likely. However, their wing defense at the moment, like their defense in general, in since the trade for OG Anunoby, is off the charts. It's best in the league. They've had some schedule help, but they've also they held the Sixers to 92 points at home in the third game of this stretch. But I say all of this. Is there a world where it's like just let Jokic get points or turn him into a scorer and like shut down everything else? Which is what I think the Knicks might try to do on Thursday night.
Yeah, it's funny because if a team does try to do that, then Jokic has proven now that he can go get 35, 40 points. And even when teams try to turn him into a scorer, he's still going to find his way to at least 5, 6, 7 assists, because it's not playing the beautiful game or anything like that with back cuts galore for Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter and open jump shots for Jamal Murray and KCP. Like, it's not that. But Jokic will do enough on any given possession, especially if you're going third or fourth string center against him in the post. Like, so who are we talking about here? Because it's Mitchell Robinson obviously out. Isaiah Hartenstein, I guess, is out too.
So yes, so it's not concluded yet that he'll be out. I am assuming, because this is an Achilles injury that's based on overuse, that they're not just going to give him back to Tom Thibodeau and say, "Here, go play in a Tibbs rotation," because there's no way.
Play Jokic,
right, and go play Jokic, exactly. Yeah. So let's operate under the assumption that he won't play, because if he does play, I actually do think not that he'll be able to stop Jokic, but they'll at least have a better option than Precious Achiuwa and Jericho Sims. And I think where I'm going with this is like, so you mentioned that like Jokic going 13 for 19 is like Miles Turner doing a good job. And I was looking it up the other day. I believe it's 8 times this season Jokic has shot less than 50% in the 44 games he's played, which is absurd. And honestly, it's like
down from last year.
Well, so like the craziest part is like these games where he'll go like 4 games and he'll miss like 4 shots, you know, and that's like the box score I've come to expect from him. But the Clippers are 2 of those games. In fact, he has that 9 of 32 in December, and he has the game in November, which really, it's early in the season, so it's tough to take. But they used their wings and they switched everything. And I'm wondering if the Knicks, again, you're not going to stop Nikola Jokic, but I'm more concerned about winning the game. Can you let him? Yeah. That's where I'm going with my question is like, is there a world where the Knicks like have the rest figured out and they'll let Jokic go for like 40, 12 and 5 rather than him run like the Peyton Manning offense?
No, I'm with you, Andrew. There's no doubt in my mind that the Knicks can and probably should win this game. Like,
really? Oh, okay,
yeah. Wow. Denver's on the end of a 5-game road trip, and they are pretty tired. They are physically beat down. Jokic and Murray are playing good basketball right now, but Michael Porter's a little sick. Aaron Gordon's got a shoulder strain. Like they've got some bumps and bruises, and the rest of their rotation is certainly a little bit. They're probably lower in terms of where they should be in terms of physically ready for a game against the Knicks. Like the Knicks are I'm not going to curse. The Knicks are a terrible team to play when you are not wanting to be physical.
I'll do it for you. They're a bitch to play.
They're a bitch to play. That's okay. There we go. Yeah. There we go. I just didn't know if I could.
You're good.
Yeah, no, this is one of those games where, OG Anunoby, if he spends a bunch of time on Jamal Murray, he's going to make him work. If it's Michael Porter, who's having to go through Josh Hart and other wings on the team, like it's going to be tough. It is going to be a physical pain to have to go through that team. And then Julius Randle, one of the most physical guys in the league, as long as he's locked in on the defensive end, you just can't give up those back cuts to Aaron Gordon. You can't give up the short roll Jokic. Murray passes to Jokic. Jokic lobs it over to Gordon. Like Randle can't give that up every time. And if you shut off that water and you focus on, okay, we're going to make Jokic into a post scorer, into an isolation scorer, that's probably the way to slow down Denver. And just hope that he goes 13 of 19 instead of 16 and 19. And then you certainly have a chance in that regard. There's no doubt in my mind that even though it might be Jericho Sims and Precious Achiuwa, I think the Jokic will cook those guys. But Jericho Sims will block his shot a couple of times with his athleticism. And Precious Achiuwa will out-hustle him and hit a couple open threes and do some things just on the margins. And then it comes down to the other guys winning their matchups. And I think that there's no doubt that they can.
The only pushback I have is the Precious Achiuwa threes. He hasn't hit one yet with the Knicks. I do think the rebounding is where he'll be able to at least make Jokic work, maybe even get a couple. That's the one thing. I got off to maybe an early judgment about Precious Achiuwa, partially because everyone in Miami and Toronto said like he'll have moments, but he's not a rotation player. And then he came here and he had moments, but I was like, he's probably not a rotation player. And I'm on 2 straight games of being like, he's actually, if you let him work through some of his mistakes, he's actually a pretty solid rotation player as a backup center. Like that's all I'm asking him to be, as a backup center. I guess I'll say this: you're giving Knicks fans a little more confidence than they probably had going into this, saying that the schedule of it all, the banged up nature that the Nuggets might be. I think it's because the Knicks just haven't played a complete. Like the Philly game was a complete effort, but they haven't really played a complete game yet. There's always this 4 or 5 minute stretch. It's usually when Jalen Brunson is off the floor that they just can't score. And it's funny, their bench unit, the 5-man unit of OG Anunoby playing with the bench. So that's Josh Hart, Quentin Grimes, Deuce McBride, and Precious Achiuwa. It's in the 100th percentile in points allowed per possession. They're allowing 84 points per 100 possession. It's a small sample size, but it's like an elite defense, right? They're in the 0th percentile on offense. So you're literally just trying to win those like 4 minutes that happen each half, or it might be more like 2 to 3 minutes that happen each half. You're trying to win it like 3-2, and then you bring Jalen Brunson back in. Now that's like 5 minutes I described, which means Jalen Brunson's playing 43 minutes, which is why I think they need to go make a move, which leads to the transition where I ask about Bruce Brown. So there's a bit of a debate going on at Knicks Film School, specifically between me and our main host, Jonathan Macri. He's talked himself into Bruce Brown to be the Knicks backup point guard, wants the Knicks to make a trade for him from Toronto. I worry about the spacing. I worry about his ability to play with Josh Hart in a lineup with Randall and a true center. I just think teams will go zone and it'll make it impossible for the Knicks to score. And as we've seen already, the Knicks already have that lineup existing. I want to have an open mind though. And he played a little bit of backup point guard for the Nuggets during the playoffs last year, right? So if you can elaborate, like convince me, is Bruce Brown a good fit for the Knicks currently as is?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. When I heard the rumor that they were interested and that they'd be a fun team, a good team for Bruce Brown, and to
can I interrupt you real quick? Can I interrupt you real quick? Because not only was it a rumor, it was Bruce Brown going on the record saying, "I'm a Tom Thibodeau player." I couldn't believe that was a real quote.
That's true.
He was basically like, you know what? It's not even just like I'd be a good team for a contender to pick up. It was like the team we just played, they should pick me up. It was basically that quote.
Yeah, that's funny. That is aggressive. If I'm Bruce Brown,
pick me is what he said. He's on the court saying to whoever's picking in 5-on-5, "Hey, pick me." That's literally what he said.
I think that, so I'm a fan of Isaiah Hartenstein for what it's worth. I like his playmaking. I know he hasn't been as much of that in New York as maybe he was in Denver or with the Clippers, but I know that his playmaking can really help. He's a good DHO guy. He's somebody who, as long as you get into the flow of the offense and you don't have to just run Bruce Brown pick and roll and Bruce Brown DHO the entire time, then I think there's a world where that works. I'm surprised that the lineup that you're talking about doesn't include one of Brunson or Randall. I'm surprised that they haven't really staggered those guys in that regard, because like I think we're talking about OG Anunoby as the main stagger guy here. Like I'm surprised that it hasn't included that. But if you go to a Bruce Brown, I think it makes sense with him kind of as the secondary creator, and then one of those other guys is the primary creator, and then he can kind of riff off of that.
So come playoff time, I would expect it to be like one of Randall, or like they go to an 8-man rotation and maybe Deuce plays like 4 or 5 minutes. And like Deuce McBride, who was not known as a shooter throughout his first 2 seasons, has actually shot the ball really well from 3 since the trade and being inserted into the rotation. However, I don't know if that's going to exist come playoff time. And I do see the logic come playoff time. If you're going 8 men, that they're all like either capable defenders or bring like a hella gravity between Randall and Brunson. That is a April conversation. And I need to get to April, which is why I think the only way I can talk myself into it is if you get Bruce Brown without having to trade Quentin Grimes. And you can actually, like, Brunson doesn't have to play 36 minutes a night. You can play Bruce Brown 20 to 22 minutes, and he can play with Brunson in certain lineups. The terrifying part for me is that, like we're going to see Tibbs fall in love with size again and be like, I'm going to play Josh Hart and Bruce Brown next to each other, which if Brunson's not on the floor and Randall is, if Randall draws a double, who's he kicking it out to? That like the teams have to honor. It's just Anunoby. So if you play him close, it's like, go ahead, Josh Hart, go ahead, Bruce Brown, hit three. So I'm leading the witness though. Please dispel my nerves if like Brown's actually like a better shooter than I'm giving him credit for.
So he is a better shooter than you're giving him credit for.
Okay, good.
Like in Denver, he did have a better shooting season, obviously, than he did in Indiana so far, and certainly in Toronto. He shot 35.8% from three in the regular season last year. Then in the playoffs, he only shot 31.6%, but it wasn't about that. It was more that he was willing to take those shots. And when you're slowing the game down, it just makes like 1-3 could make the difference, especially in a grinded out game like a New York style, where you guys you're going to play 94 to 89 games pretty consistently in a playoff environment. And it's just the 1-3 that can make a difference. And I got to tell you, man, I want Bruce Brown on my side if I am going to war like that. And Tibbs teams are going to war, and he will get out in transition. He'll earn you some of those easy buckets. He will run the occasional pick and roll in DHO, take some pressure off of Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle in the particular moment. And it's not just about the 3-point spacing with him. It is about all the other things that he does beyond just the 3-point shot. And then when he does get hot from three, he can win you a game that way. I think back to Game 4 of the NBA Finals, which I was there. That's a good little shout. Game 4 of the NBA Finals, Denver plays in Miami, and he scores like 27 points or some crazy number. He's hit 6 threes, and he is taking over the fourth quarter in a situation where Miami they didn't have an answer for him and Aaron Gordon, let alone Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. They were so worried about the stars that it gave Bruce an opportunity to really show out, and he did. So I think if you're game planning for New York, you're trying to shut off the water for Jalen Brunson. You're trying to shut off the water for Julius Randle. If you overcompensate to those guys, Bruce is a guy that can really hurt you if you're an opposing team. So I think the fit is really good. Do I think the rest of the roster around Bruce Brown with a Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle pairing is ideal? No, but I think that there's enough with Isaiah Hartenstein as kind of a secondary playmaker for them that could really make it work.
You almost talked me into it with the Game 4 talk. Like I'm
He's
staring
a gamer,
at the box
man.
score now. Yeah, it alluded 8 of 11, 3 of 5 from three. Like he there was a Bruce Brown game that happened and it won a playoff game. So I get it.
I was thinking of the Aaron Gordon numbers, by the way.
No, you're good. He still had a good game. Yeah, like Bruce Brown did have a good game in the finals. Which, look, I guess if they didn't already have Josh Hart. And look, I said recently on a podcast, if you don't have to trade Quentin Grimes and it's just like the Fournier salary dump and this year's pick protected, I think I'm fine with it because then he's your backup point guard and you still don't have the spacing concerns. Like my spacing concerns go away with Grimes, and as much as I like what Deuce McBride has brought this year, Bruce Brown would be an upgrade over Deuce McBride just in general. So, and again, the biggest, and you may see this depending on who is available on Thursday, but the minutes have just been the most terrifying thing for me right now. Like OG Anunoby played like 125 minutes in 3 games, and then the 3 games were in 4 days. And I think someone said something to Tibbs because then Hartenstein got hurt and it was an overuse injury. And then last night against Brooklyn, there's this one substitution that's been added, and it's this fourth quarter substitution where he just leaves for 3 minutes and comes back. And I was like, oh, that's a wrinkle. You're taking 6 minutes off of his rotation suddenly. And he ended up playing 33 minutes. So I think as long as it's not an overpay, which is Grimes, a pick, and the salary filler, I think I can live with it. It's
now can you live with it if for example, Philly trades for him and then you don't have him and then you have to face him in a Philly series?
I'm really not that, like, as long as the Knicks make a move, because I think they have to improve the bench scoring in some way. I read the numbers. It's like the bench unit's defense is fine. It's very much like they don't score enough points, and you want to be able to trust them for these final 38 games or so. And then, you don't have to play Jalen Brunson 45 minutes in a playoff game. You may have to if it gets down to like brass tacks and it's like, okay, we have 2 games left in the series. You're not sitting the rest of it. I think you have Josh Hart to neutralize the Bruce Brown of it all,
Okay.
And I think that's where I go with this. As long as if the Knicks do nothing, then I'd be like, oh, you probably should have went and got Bruce Brown. It's if they also do something, I think it'll be able to still counteract that, I
think it seems reasonable. And like, if I were from the outside, you obviously have to get some sort of backup point guard that can shoot a little bit, that can create off the dribble a little bit, and do some of the replicable things that a Jalen Brunson does. Easier said than done, obviously. Maybe the addition is somebody like a Jordan Clarkson, but I'm sure that's probably come up on the show a couple times here or there. But
Jordan Clarkson, Malcolm Brogdon, Alec Burks, former Nick, once a Nick, always a Nick,
always
has
a Nick,
come
baby.
up. Yeah. So I think that's where, look, the tough part about having so much pushback to the idea of Bruce Brown is like, I do see his value. Like I do see him playing important playoff minutes and being an important part of a playoff team and bringing that to the Knicks, which is why I don't want to completely dismiss the idea. It's the context of it all and the lineups that would just drive me nuts that, yes, we're stopping them. We've scored 2 points in the last 7 minutes though. So I think I'm more afraid of that. Bruce Brown could technically go back to Denver too. He is available. Is that... If it's not Bruce Brown, who is it that you might be interested in?
It would be fun. It would be fun if Denver could add Bruce Brown back into the equation. But unless he's so the only way that I could actually see him getting back to Denver is if he gets traded to another team or even stays with Toronto and then they decline his team option and he signs with Denver for the cheap again, because they just don't have the tradable contracts in order to send him out, like in order to get him back. Like, are you trading Michael Porter Jr.? Are you trading Aaron Gordon? Are you trading KCP? Those are the only 3 real tradable contracts that they have. And then the next highest amount that they have is $5 million with Reggie Jackson, who's actually been pretty solid for them. So I don't think it's going to happen. I think Denver, they've got their sights set a lot lower. A backup center number that's in the $2 to $5 million range. Maybe a backup forward, somebody who could provide a little bit more versatility for them. But I can't imagine them actually doing anything too crazy at the deadline. They don't need a ton. They just need the guys that they have to kind of step up and play a little bit better, like a Christian Brown, like Zeke Najee's probably done in the rotation, I got to expect, but which is tough because he just signed a 4-year, $32 million extension this offseason. So it's not great for that to be the case, but I think Denver will work on the fringes, if that.
So let's take Bruce Brown off the table. What does a team that just won the title need to improve on as far as is there a move that Nuggets fans in general are saying we need to go out and get player X?
Backup center would be great. Andre Drummond is somebody that I think a lot of people have thrown out as an option. Just somebody who can spell Jokic a little bit, and also somebody who could just run pick and roll with Jamal Murray. That's the thing with Denver is right now they're trying to run pick and rolls with Jamal Murray with Zeke Naji, who is undersized and isn't really popping to 3 despite the fact that he should be. And then DeAndre Jordan, who just can't really do much of anything right now. So he'll get the occasional lob dunk when it's put on a silver platter for him, but that's something that Andre Drummond could do on top of all the other things that an Andre Drummond type does, which is rebound, make some plays out of the pick and roll, things like that. Denver needs a little bit more from that backup 5 spot. They had Jeff Green last year, who was a small ball 5 for them in a lot of lineups and just offered a little bit of versatility. So does it need to be a full-on backup center, 6'11", 7 foot kind of guy? No, but it just needs to be some sort of body. So not even sure who that is. Not even sure. Denver is very much a wait and see kind of team. And I don't think that they're going to push anything that they don't have to. And frankly, they always go to Aaron Gordon as the backup center in the playoffs anyway. So do you really want to spend a bunch of resources trying to get somebody like that? I don't know.
Well, I am curious to see what Denver does. And more specifically, I don't know. I think my preseason pick was that they'll repeat, and I don't think that's changed just yet. Again, there's just a mode that they go to anytime I see them in a game that matters. That's they're the most unstoppable team because they have arguably the most unstoppable guy running their offense when it gets to the top. Now, it's obviously a place the Knicks fans are hoping to get to one day. This is usually the point in the show where I turn the show over to my guest and ask if you have any questions or thoughts on the Knicks. I know we've gotten a lot of them from the Bruce Brown conversation, but whether it be your reaction to the Anunoby trade or just the Knicks in general, what are your thoughts or questions about the Knicks?
So my biggest question right now is the center spot, because I know what Jalen Brunson is going to bring. I think I know what Julius Randle is going to bring. And then you've got some mix of tough, hard-nosed guys on the wings with the OG Anunoby, the Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, guys of that nature. You're going to be just fine there. What's going on with the center spot? Because is Mitchell Robinson healthy? Is he going to come back healthy? Is he going to this exception that they applied for? Why was that denied? What the hell is happening there?
So we'll start with Mitch. He had ankle surgery beginning of December. It was initially an 8 to 10 week evaluation. About 3 weeks into that evaluation, the Knicks applied for the exception, and it was a bit of Armageddon. We got into the Andre Drummond fake trade conversations and Kelly Olynyk, and just the Knicks signed Taj Gibson a couple days earlier, and it was oh, this must be locker room padding. And no, he was your backup center for 2 weeks after that. I think it got denied because it was very, insurance is kind of the word here, that they were listen, if he's not back, then we at least applied for this thing and it gets approved, because you don't know what is going to happen 8 to 10 weeks from now. And if he is back, the NBA can just deny it and we get Mitchell Robinson back. So we're coming up on 8 weeks, to be honest. I think next week will be 8 weeks since he got hurt. Maybe it's we're at 6.5 weeks at the moment. So who knows? There is a wonder, and this is where the Isaiah Hartenstein part comes in. The playmaking element that you hinted at that he's added to the starting five has made it that if Mitch comes back, he's your backup center. So that, I think, is where I currently stand with the center rotation. As far as this game goes, if Hartenstein's out, it's going to be Jokic against Precious Achiuwa and Jericho Sims. And, it's 48 minutes of you having far and above the better player at the position.
I look forward to that matchup, because Jericho Sims is going to dunk on Nikola Jokic at some point. It's going to be hilarious. Precious Achiuwa will absolutely hit a three over him. I know he hasn't hit one yet.
This will be the game. Okay.
Yeah, if you've got the 0.5 on the betting lines, go for the over, folks, because he knows how to go against Jokic. But yeah, no, it should be fascinating. I think if there's one thing that's really holding back the Knicks now, it's probably is the center position solidified heading into the playoffs? And because I like what Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, and OG Anunoby make up as kind of a big three there. I think that makes a lot of sense.
I do too. And I think this is why that deadline is going to be so fascinating, because the Anunoby upgrade is so evident. And the difference in what the quickly RJ version of this roster is for so long under Tibbs, it was my starters are going to play even. I'm going to have this bench unit that's going to blitz teams because there are some starters on it. And I'm going to build leads with the bench. I'm going to have one lineup that's going to be Jalen Brunson and Emmanuel quickly next to each other. That's going to build leads even more so. It was plus 20 when the trade happened. And that it wasn't playing the most amount of minutes. Their beginning of games and the beginning of the third quarters were always all right, let's see what happens here. It was called the third quarter of doom in New York. And now your best lineup is your starting five. Your best lineup is the lineup you're using the most. And it's a novel concept,
Pretty good.
it's crazy to think that you should do that more often. But the point being is that they've created that dynamic now. Their best lineup is the starting five. And when you put Josh Hart with the starting five for DiVincenzo, it's still great. When you put Josh Hart instead of Anunoby, it's still great. And he just has so many really good options that's what Anunoby's brought you. So
makes a lot of sense. I like it, man. I think you guys there's a serious chance of upsetting one of those top three teams. And like that's what you wanted. I don't know if like how much more you can ask for given the personnel, but there's a serious chance of upsetting at least one of those teams, if not multiple.
Listen, I maintain my thoughts during the playoffs last year. My biggest fears came to fruition, to be honest, because I went in being like, this team is really talented. I picked them to beat Cleveland, but it wasn't like a confident one. And I was like, I think the winner of this series can get to the conference finals. Yeah. Because of my hesitations with Boston and Missoula and just kind of the dog, like you said, the dog in that team. The Embiid playoff concerns scared me, but I was like, I think the Bucks, like, they would probably out-talent us, and I think Giannis is great, and so I think we'd lose that, but I think the Knicks would have the coaching advantage. The one thing that scares me is if they ever have to play Spo, and that's the thing that I'm still concerned about to this day, and I know you don't have that worry because the Nuggets got rid of the Heat in 5, but for the rest of us in the Eastern Conference, we were like, well, we can't stop this voodoo magic of Eric Spoelstra against our team.
Crazy. He tried everything against the Nuggets, man. Like they're really that was the one where the talent disparity really showed, but it wasn't for lack of preparation for the Heat. They did everything under the sun to try to get under Denver, and then it just didn't end up working because Jokic.
Yeah, Jokic and the Heat just like stopped being otherworldly from 3 all of a sudden. The rest of us were looking, it was very much the LeBron in the final staring at J.R. Smith meme where we were just like,
yeah, exactly.
This is the team that's going to lose the finals. It's this 8th seed that can't shoot. We saw this in the play-in. Anyway, we'll see interesting to see what happens in the playoffs this year. Last question before I let you get out of here. The Mount Rushmore of rivals. Now, I sent you this in the little rundown, but I ask this at the end of every show. I want to get the idea of who you look forward to on the schedule. It comes out in the summer, and they're the 4 teams that you like, all right, when are we playing them? Who are the 4 teams that you look forward to playing the most? Your Mount Rushmore of Nuggets rivals.
Well, unfortunately, now the Sixers have really moved up that list. It's not what I expected, not what I wanted, but clearly the unfortunately toxic nature of that Jokic versus Embiid rivalry has really moved it up the list in a significant way. Yeah. So the Sixers are 1. The Lakers are 2. They're always going to be that team for Denver because they tortured Denver for its entire franchise, basically. And being able to get them back in the conference finals last year was probably the most rewarding aspect of the playoff run, I'll say, even like perhaps more rewarding than actually winning the thing. I think the Suns, because those teams have kind of gone back and forth for sure. There is a Jokic versus Matt Ishbia rivalry now.
That's right.
How weird is that now? Because they traded DeAndre Ayton, but they acquired Yusuf Nurkic, who was a former Nugget. Very, very public exit that he had from like literally leaving the arena in one of Denver's games, and then that basically got him traded from Denver back in 2017. So the Suns are definitely up there with the talent that they have and how much trash they talk as well. And then maybe the T-Wolves. The T-Wolves are now sort of pushing themselves onto that list. They have Tim Connolly, who is a former Nuggets executive who basically built this team, and like with Jokic, Murray, Porter, Gordon, guys like that. And he wasn't able to see the fruits of his labor, but he now has assembled a team with Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns, and a bunch of talented people that has the best chance of knocking out Denver in the Western Conference. So they're tied at the hip there between those teams. So I think it's got to be the Sixers, the Lakers, the Wolves, and the Suns.
So first of all, the Timberwolves wear that as a badge of honor, by the way. When I did the Timberwolves pregame pods, and it's like they'll say in the locker room that the Nuggets talk about how difficult it was to play us in the playoffs, and I just was like, okay, that was a 5-game series, guys. Like, I get it that it was probably tough, but it was the hardest of a bunch of easy series for Denver, fortunately. That is true. Yeah. And like, I even talk about that Lakers series where like the average margin of victory was 6 points. And like they had to work for game 1 was down to the wire. Game 2, there was a late comeback. And then game 3 and 4 were both close. So I agree with you that it's as competitive a 5-game, a gentleman sweep and a sweep could possibly be, which is why the Heat series was so frustrating. It was like, oh, this is what a 1 versus an 8 is supposed to look like.
Yeah, Lakers one in particular was really funny because you had Brian Windhorst going on TV the next day being like, that was the most competitive sweep I've ever seen. Like, come on, man.
Yeah. So that actually leads to a question I wanted to ask you because the Knicks, I'll speak on behalf of Knicks fans. I do think I have a pulse on this. And I do think I'm part of this.
Sure.
And it's a frustration, which how we're nationally talked about. No one talks about how they found like a diamond in the rough with Julius Randle and turned him into an all-star, all-NBA player. Nobody talks about the steal of the century with Jalen Brunson and how they got him. I get how they got him. It was a family affair in getting Leon Rose and the connections he has with CAA to lure Brunson in. And now he's like might start the All-Star game, right? Like there are ways to talk about the Knicks, and every conversation is like, what do they need to get to the next level, and what do they like? Why like can they win it with a superstar? And it's like, how about let's just like talk about basketball and what they're doing right rather than what they don't have and what they aren't. And like Candace Parker's going through it today. And I actually like really like Candace Parker and I love her analysis. And she said last night, like, I guess the question was asked, what do they need to do to get to the next level? And she was like, good in the first round, not so good in the second about Jalen Brunson, a round in which he averaged 31, 6, and 6 efficiently.
Pretty good.
And you don't say. And so we were like, what do you mean wasn't good in the second round? It's better in the second round than in the first round. It
was definitely not him. Definitely.
I say that because I've gathered from my time browsing through Nuggets Twitter, there is a frustration with how the Nuggets are talked about too, and how it's like Jokic. I mean, look, the conversation, like you mentioned, how it got toxic last year between Jokic and Embiid in the MVP discussion, but like, how much of a frustration just in general with how the Nuggets are talked about do you and the Nuggets fan base have with like, this is won the title last year, one of the more impressive runs that we've ever seen. And it's always like the Clippers, the Lakers, the other teams, and not the defending champs that get brought up.
It's par for the course, frankly. Okay. This is just one of those things where Nuggets fans understand how this goes, and they've learned this in a very difficult way over the course of like the entire conversation last year was about how Denver still needs to prove it. They still need to prove it, despite the fact that throughout the regular season, there was zero doubt in anybody's mind who the best team in the Western Conference was. But it wasn't until they beat the Phoenix Suns, a team that like had acquired Kevin Durant, still had Devin Booker and Chris Paul. The Suns had throttled Denver. They swept Denver a couple of years prior, and they made it look really easy. It wasn't until then that the national media really started to turn like, oh shit, like this team is actually like, this is the team. And that's when the odds started flipping as well. And I think since that moment, the respect has come. There's no doubt that like everybody still acknowledges Jokic as like a generational player. I'm not sure if they all say that he's the best player. He is the best player. I'm sorry, Joel. But Jokic is the best player in the world. And I think everybody pretty much acknowledges that. They've seen what Jamal Murray does in the playoffs. They've seen what the Nuggets have done in the playoffs. And so you go through this kind of malaise, this a little bit of time where, okay, Denver sometimes isn't as focused. And I think they get mostly a pass. So I can understand you got to do it first. If you are the Knicks, if you are the Nuggets, if you are these teams that haven't done it yet. And I think that's been the Knicks' issue so far, is that they did win a first round series this last year, but it was against the Cleveland Cavaliers in one where everybody was like, what is going on with Cleveland? And so that was part of it. Now, did the Knicks have something to do with that? Yeah, they killed them. But when Jimmy Butler rolls an ankle and he doesn't have this great, awesome series, and you still lose to Caleb Martin and guys like that, that is going to, I think, get a little bit of like pushback from the national media, because I think with that injury that Jimmy sustained, I think a lot of people thought, okay, this is the Knicks' time. This is where they can really rise to the occasion. And they didn't. Now, Jalen Brunson did, but other guys, I think you're still waiting on. You're still trying to figure it out. So until you do it, until you actually reach and cross that threshold, then it's always going to be an uphill battle. It is, especially national media wise, it is always going to be prove it, and then we will be there for you. And I think that the Knicks are in the process of proving it, but they've still got to do it.
So it's funny as the any pushbacks I'd have to like Julius Randle rolled his ankle too in the last game of the Cavs series. And so he wasn't 100%. And Emmanuel Quickly, their 6th man of the year candidate, while he wasn't like great in the playoffs, still was like a better option than Deuce McBride. And he went out in game 3 because, again, Bam Adebayo was dirty. And yet, like, I agree with you. Like, the way this goes away is you do it. Like, you win. And winning just, like, makes it all kind of go away. And it's why I think eventually the Knicks are going to have to just do it. And, you know, hopefully that'll shut a lot of the haters up. So,
like, think about how much credit the Bucks are getting right now, despite the fact that they fired their darn coach 43 games into the season, because they won a championship back in 2021 with a different coach, with a different roster.
2 coaches ago. Yeah.
Just because Giannis has been able, like, he did it before, and he did it like in completely different circumstances where the entire NBA was recovering from the COVID year. I understand that. Like, there are some easy circumstances for Giannis to, once he got through Kevin Durant and the Brooklyn Nets, it was pretty smooth sailing for the Bucks throughout that. So I think in general that the Knicks, if there is a year to kind of like surprise people and make a conference finals run and really put yourselves on the map, it's this year, because as like talented as some of these teams are in the East, like you said it already, like we don't know what Joel Embiid's going to do in the playoffs. We don't know what the Sixers are going to do in the playoffs. We have no idea what a Doc Rivers-led Milwaukee team is going to do in the playoffs. The Miami Heat can't keep getting away with it. Like there's reasons to believe that it can be the Knicks' time. And I don't know if it will happen. I think a lot of people are a little bit loath to put the cart before the horse there, but it can happen. And so you can have positivity and belief, but you can't, like, you got to wait for everybody else to jump on that bandwagon until you actually do it.
To be honest, it's probably where the Bruce Brown stuff, like why someone might talk themselves into him. It's like, well, he did it. Like, he won the title and was like an important contributor to a team that won the title, which is, it's why, like, I'd be fine. Like, I'd understand it if they don't also trade Quentin Grimes. That, yeah, like, that is like a contributor to a team that won a title that's now going to be part of your playoff rotation. So I do get it. Now, a player that, this is the last question, and I'm kind of surprising you with it.
Okay.
But I think that we'll keep this to 2 minutes because I know I'm keeping you longer. But
all good.
I mentioned the last time you were here how big a Carmelo Anthony fan I am. And he has recently started his own. He's joined us in the podcast world. And I know he said some things about his number. Just put a percentage on it of a chance that 15 with Anthony on it ever gets retired in Denver. Is it less than 5%? Can it get to 10%?
I think so. The goal with it was always that they would retire both of them. It was always going to be that.
I figured,
and that was it. And then he had to run his mouth about being upset about the number. Like, what are you doing, man? Just let them live. Let this team that won the title and did something that you never did in Denver, let them live. Let them have their time. And Melo, and I'm sorry to say this, Melo is still under the assumption that he is the main character in his own story. And he is. He's the main character in his own story. But he is not the main character in any Nuggets fan story anymore. Nuggets fans appreciated him. They appreciated his ability to help bring them out of the depths where they were and give them some legitimacy. But there is a certain bearing that you have to have, and so a certain like desire to actually be somewhere that you have to have in order for that number retirement to actually mean something. He never wanted to be in Denver. The only reason he was there was because he was drafted and because he had a rookie contract. And the moment he had an opportunity to go to a larger market, to go to a place where he would be happier, that's where he decided to go. Every report that I've heard about the Nuggets wanting to rebuild at that time has been argued. It has been discussed and said, yeah, that's not actually what was going to happen. That is something that Melo kind of made up. And that's frustrating because if Melo is telling himself this own story, this different tale about how things are going, how much am I really going to believe what he's saying about the Nuggets and their desire to actually like they gave it to a Serbian dude who was a second round pick who nobody in Denver really thought was going to amount to anything. But the reason why they gave away his number was because he treated Denver disrespectfully.
Yeah.
And that like he doesn't deserve that credit anymore. And if you keep going to great lengths to distance yourself from the Nuggets organization, then they're just going to do the same.
So 1%, 2%, 0.
Now I will go 5%. I still think that there is an opportunity to mend fences, but it's got to come from both parties, man. It can't just it has to start with Melo not talking about them publicly on his podcast about how upset he is with the Nuggets organization.
So I'll say this, the fact that Shaq is going to be the first Orlando Magic player to get his number retired, and the way that relationship ended, and it's like very similar to how obviously Shaq made the finals with Orlando, so it's different in that sense that the Nuggets didn't make the finals with Melo, but had gotten the furthest they had ever been not the furthest they had been in a while in the playoffs with Melo in the conference finals. There's a world where time can heal, and I wonder if when he goes into the Hall of Fame, that's when I think the Knicks will retire. Number 7 is like Hall of Famer Carmelo Anthony gets it retired. I wonder if that's when 15, and like to your point about you could retire 2 numbers. Another team that has number 15 retired twice, the New York Knicks, who have Earl Monroe and Dick McGuire currently retired. So
it can happen. It can. This isn't something where cooler heads have to prevail in this situation, and you got to get some distance away from it. And you got to if Jokic wins 2 more titles in Denver, it may not happen, but you don't have to it was just never about Melo, man. It was just about Denver trying to move on. And I'm really disappointed with the way that he approached that. And I think that a lot of Nuggets fans are too, because a lot of Nuggets fans wanted to celebrate his time, but he's not allowing them to.
Well, as a courtesy to you, my friend, I made sure to put a Jalen Brunson piece of merch over my Melo jersey, so you didn't have to stare at it the entire podcast. You're welcome. And I appreciate you making the time for me to preview this matchup in general. Ryan, you were great. I always love talking to you about a defending champion. It's a different wrinkle, but we'll see if the next time we talk, if it's the same context. Before you get out of here, please let the fine people at home that are listening know where they can find you and all your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find all my Twitter ramblings at NBA Blackburn down there on the screen. But also, if you're looking for podcasts on either the Nuggets or the NBA in general, I cover the Nuggets for Pickaxe Roll, which is a good Nuggets podcast that does a lot of analytics stuff and rotations and things like that. It's fun. It's very similar to Knicks Film School. And then if you are interested in general NBA coverage, something that I'm interviewing every beat writer and analyst and whatever from all 30 teams around the NBA. It's called The Alley-Oop with Ryan Blackburn. It's on YouTube. So make sure you go check that out.
There you go. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Andrew.